Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back. And thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Talking Each Other Home. This is a podcast and a place where we can come and have candid and open conversations about all things spirit stuff, connection, ritual, psychedelics, pretty much anything that will help enlighten and empower our journeys as we walk and talk each other home. I am your host, Dani, and joining me today, I have Tonya, just this queen, goddess, primal energy, mother. And we have the most awesome conversation. I met her when I was camping with the Fit for Service group in Sedona. And our relationship has just sort of, snowballed, and we've gotten closer over the last couple of years and even more close this year. And we talk about so many things, you guys. She's been nomadic for the last 5 years. We talk about her journey through being married for 17 years, opening up their relationship, and then going through a divorce. So we talk a little bit about relationships and shadow work. We talk about plant medicine and psychedelics and how her and her girls connect to nature, having been living in an RV for 5 years and going between living in the States and experiencing the jungle and living in Costa Rica. So this was a very interesting, very amazing conversation. And we close it out with something that's very new and exciting for Tonya, and something that she's starting this whole group and teaching. And I'm part of the group. I'm so excited. But it's learning about our cycle and how to honor our cycle. And basically there's 4 different archetypes. There's 4 different things that happen during the month-long cycle. So there's 4 different energies that happen. And I don't want to get too much into it, but that's kind of what we close out with. So if you've been curious about how to harness your feminine energy and flow with nature and flow with yourself and flow with the universe instead of shoving it under the rug and acting like it doesn't exist, this is going to be an amazing podcast for you. I enjoyed this so much. I'm still super lit up by it. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love. Namaste. And it's a full moon right now. So happy full moon. Okay. Hi, it's me again. One more thing. So if you're enjoying this content and the guests that I'm having on, and it's helping enlighten and empower your journey, or maybe somebody that you know, there are a couple ways that you can give back. And so if you're listening on Spotify or any other kind of podcast hosting platform, leaving a 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like, comment, subscribe. Any of those things would be great. It helps me and helps the channel. I love comments too. Like, if I'm always taking suggestions. And if you want to give back in another way, I just started a Patreon. So that's pretty cool, new and exciting. And there's a sliding scale of ways that you can give back and get involved. There's even monthly group calls with me, or even one-on-one calls. But either way, I always love to hear from you guys. I love comments. I love suggestions. And I create this content as medicine for myself, but also for you as well. So if there's burning desires or questions that you have that you want answered, please feel free to email me, Dani@DaniReardon.com, or leave a comment on YouTube. Get a hold of me some way. I would love to hear from you. And I appreciate any sort of giving back that you would like to contribute. Even if it's just a good energy and you're sending me love, that's perfectly fine too. Okay, that's enough for now. Enjoy the episode. Tonya, welcome to Talking Each Other Home. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be such a fun conversation. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I think so too. I don't really know where it's going to go or end up, but there's so many amazing things that we can talk about. So I'm not even concerned about it at all. In fact, I'm just worried, like, are we going to have enough time to talk about all of these amazing things? Because I feel like each little topic that we discussed before can be its own podcast and course, like 8-week course, probably. And just to give people a little bit of a background on how I met you. So I've recorded a couple things about me going to Sedona, and like sort of my, last year was my first year. This time was my second time. And so everybody, I've talked about camping and then the things that I've done outside of that, but Tonya is the person at the center. She's like the heart of the Soul Rising camp, and she puts it all together. She makes it like little homes for us. And like, this is where you go, Tenlandia, and like all of these different things. So Tonya's kind of been our camp mama and been putting together all of these things for us. And so that's how we met, was actually in Sedona, in the red dirt, doing self improvement work and spiritual stuff, and kind of getting down and dirty inside and outside. And I really have to thank you, because you opened up my world so much to camping outside. And I remember showing up with Mallory and I was like,
Yeah.
well, we have hammocks, but I don't know what to do with it. And you were like, all right, come here. You had your phone and you were like, Shane, get over here. And you were like, help them. And you really like took us in such a beautiful way and really changed the landscape of how I think about camping in Sedona. And like, it was a really big experience both years for me, and you were at the center of that. So I just want to say thank you before we start.
Oh, thank you. You're so welcome. I love, love hosting Soul Rising Camp. And even like it got bigger this year and it was a whole lot, but I loved every second of all of the logistics and being able to welcome everyone to what feels like my backyard and my home. And I'm so happy that you had a great experience. We have another girl that I just ran into. It was her first time camping this year, and she camped and loved it and went home and sold all of her things and is now moving into an RV after just camping for 2 weeks. So
Oh my goodness, what a huge impact. And
yeah.
maybe that's a good place for us to jump off, is because you've been nomadic for over 5 years now, and living in your RV and
Mm-hmm.
bouncing between the US and Costa Rica. And I think that's like something that's very in people's awareness this year. I think I talk to somebody every day and they're like, oh, I've always thought about going in an RV, or that's our plan. So I'd like to know a little bit about your journey doing that and how it is with 2 kids and traveling between countries, basically. So just, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started full-time RVing. It was, yeah, over 5 years ago. And it was this realization of like the biggest piece of it was I don't want my kids to know there's a normal. And so I really wanted to break out and break free and go do what it was that we wanted to do and expose them to a lot of different cultures and people living their lives differently and doing different things. Um, and so we did that, and we were off grid for about 3 years of that mostly. And it really was a lot of time focused on ourselves.
Mm.
Like just our priorities, our health was a big one, just like health and family and out in nature. It's like that connection piece was so amazing to bring back. And it hasn't left. We are I feel like so disengaged from the rest of the world now. But it's given us such a beautiful experience. And then we found Costa Rica, and Costa Rica has been this big giant open arm like jungle hug, like whatever you need, how can we get you to stay here, how can we help. It has been so beautiful there, and we have a really strong spiritual community that we're surrounded by down there. My daughters have always been homeschooled, so I've homeschooled them throughout our time RVing. And down in Costa Rica, we've actually found a school that they attend down there, and it's like it reminds me of like a school for superheroes, like. And it's just like we're giving them the chance to flourish in what feels good for them, and not necessarily here's the curriculum forced upon them, but what is alive for you, and how can we fan those flames. And it's a really different approach and really mindful and beautiful, and it's in the middle of the jungle. Yeah, it's been a wild ride of self-discovery, and really for our family. We're pretty good at traditions now, and I'm navigating divorce through all of this as well. And I think it kind of, luckily, being mobile and being independent has really helped that process along a little bit. But yeah, we've really been able to bounce around and see a lot and experience some incredible things, and there's no possible way that we will be going back to any type of normal life, if you will.
I keep thinking like, why isn't that the American dream? Like the American dream has its own, its thing and it's blah, blah, blah. But for me, when I hear you, I'm like, that is the dream. And also I feel like there's a lot of bravery to be able to break out of the social norm and to go nomadic and to, do the homeschool thing and to raise things that are not normal. For me, it seems like a lot of bravery and independence on your part to like spearhead that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel very strongly about being a mother.
Mm.
Um, and I want them to grow up in a different world. I want them to experience things differently. And so it's been like, I know that I'm the only one that's going to give them that. Like, I have to make those changes. They have to see me stepping up and making those changes to see that they can do that
Mhm.
too, So it's that piece of embodiment that is so important for me to, and sometimes it's hard, especially with young kids, and they're like scared to do things, or like, and I don't want to do, like, I think about cold water. Like, I hate cold water. I'll do cold plunges. Once I'm in there, it's fine. That anxiety of getting in. But it's like if my kids are around and watching, all of a sudden I have to act like that. That fear is not there, because I don't want to put that in their head. I want them to be able to decide for themselves what is hard and too much. And um yeah, sometimes that can be scary and push you past your limits.
That's a really cool way to look at it. Okay. What's been like so I guess for all those newbies out there that are curious about RV life and they're like, I want to, even if they want to get one just to travel in for a couple months out of the year, or maybe they're like, I want to throw away this normal life and go into the RV, connect with nature. Like, what would you say? What's a couple pieces of advice that like maybe you wish you knew at the beginning or that you could pass down to newbies on the road?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good question. Simplify. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy or difficult. It's finding what you need, and then when you the beautiful piece is like you get there and you have your whole house, and then you find out, oh, it turns out I don't even need all of these things, right? When you build that connection with nature and with yourself again, it's like the things really, really just become things. Um, I would say really I would suggest trying to get online and connecting with other nomadic groups. That was really helpful, especially for families. Luckily my girls are 14 months apart, so they're really close. They're best friends,
Mm.
but they like to have kids around, and kids aren't always around, especially when we're living in the middle of the forest. But we have been able to find other groups and families that are traveling, and we'll go off grid and all camp together, and it's a blast. So that's really helped to find community, and then you get to like the continual tips and tricks along the ways, and you get to see how people have set up their solar and different ways to do things. So you don't have to go in with everything figured out. um, but I definitely would dive into some major pieces along the way, know what you're doing, because the learning curve can be really really steep if you have no clue. But yeah, but taking like stepping, like just that courage piece is really really the biggest, because I have tons of people ask me about this. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you do it?
Mhm.
And it's just that action, that stepping up and saying, I want this bad enough to make a change. That's the piece that I think is the hardest. And then, the rest is going to fall into place. But courage,
Courage.
courage to.
I love that. And I heard this thing the other day about courage and confidence and how sometimes we have situational confidence. So like when we're in a certain place and we're doing a certain thing, we have confidence I was talking to a high school team. So I'm like, okay, when you're competing at home or when you're, against this team that you're better than, you have situational confidence, but core confidence is built from having courage first. And
Mhm.
after you have courage first enough times, then you're confident in yourself. So for me, that's what just came up when you said that. Like it starts with courage, taking the first step, and then you confidence comes along the way, and even courage of like changing a tire and lighting a fire, and like things that like I think would take courageousness because I don't RV often. I barely know
Mhm.
how to hang up a hammock. So all of the other things to me are like, yep, that's courageous AF. And I just, one more question on this topic is like connecting to nature. What's that been like? Out of the cities and the sort of the concrete jungle, what do you do with your girls, or what's a way that you guys connect to nature, maybe differently than the normalcy?
Um, well, we've done a couple of things. One thing I will say that's a little bit, it's available to most people, is the national parks, using the national parks and the regional parks. We use that for our homeschool curriculum, their junior ranger programs, but there's
Oh,
some really fantastic rangers that will spend time with the kids and the adults too. And it's such a great way to learn about your environment. They know about the plants and the animals. So taking the time to listen to people speak about these things, is super important. Um, and then just getting quiet and still in anywhere in nature. It's like wherever you are, and finding the sun. That's my biggest thing is like parking my RV to make sure that the sun is going to hit us as much as possible. But like starting the day with the sunrise and the sunset is my most favorite way to connect with nature. Like just starting the day with the beautiful colors and feeling the warmth right as it starts that day, and then watching it fade away and the beautiful display it puts on, especially in Arizona. We're super spoiled with beautiful sunsets. Um, that's one of my absolute favorite ways. And then with Costa Rica, being in the jungle there and just watching the wildlife is so incredible. Again, it's just like it's observing. I love to be in nature and observe, and realize like I'm part of this. I'm part of, not separate from, but part of all of this that's going on.
That's so warm and fuzzy in my body. What a cool
Yeah.
thing. What a cool thing to experience, and a cool thing to give your kids too. And so they can grow up like already connecting versus figuring out when we're 30. It took me like years until I quit bodybuilding. I was probably like 27 or 28 when I was like, oh, there's nature. Hey, nature. And actually after a mushroom experience, I was walking around like the lake at my house, and all the trees had their own personality. And I was like, this one's a grandma. This one's like watching over the lake. And then all of a sudden, now trees to me after that experience, totally different. I see the things so
Yeah.
different. So it's kind of cool to be a kid and growing up with that mentality versus having to do psychedelics and then figure it out. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the imagination and like places we get to go. We were just at Joshua Tree National Park the other day, and I want to go back there. You can camp right at the base of the boulders, and the kids could just climb all day and find little caverns and stuff to hang out in. It looks like I'm like, I want to be a kid again. Oh wait, I can't. Like nothing's stopping me from going and doing the same exact thing as they are. Um, and it's fun, and then you feel primal too. Like I don't know how many rivers I've gone through in Costa Rica where it's like slippery, so you're down low making sure you don't fall, and I just like feel the feline in me come out, and it's super primal, and oh, it feels so amazing.
That's awesome. I was gonna say panther when you were like crawling
Mhm.
across the rocks, I could see it and feel it. And what a cool way to activate like our root chakra. I don't think we get that enough in like our normal day. Like how often do we get on all fours unless you get to go to a yoga class or something
Yeah.
and like crawl around and feline, feminine, like that whole thing too is cool to connect with the
Mhm.
earth in that way. Ooh, man.
Yeah.
So cool. Okay. Um, um, so I guess talking about plants. So now we're on that. And I guess I just mentioned psychedelics. So maybe we should go into connecting to the earth in that way. Um,
Yeah.
So people on my channel know I've talked about ayahuasca before. I've talked about mushrooms, and different other things that I've done and experienced. And just curious, like, what's your favorite medicine? I know that you've experimented with a couple of them. What's one that's like really in your heart?
Oh, I feel like ayahuasca this last year was really,
Mm.
it was such an incredible experience. It was so profound. And the state that I was in before I went into the ceremony was really open and beautiful as well.
Mm.
Um, it just, it's amazing too because it has transformed my all of my journeys afterwards. Like I can feel ayahuasca when I take psilocybin now. I sometimes even with cannabis, like sometimes, which I never have visuals with, but sometimes all of a sudden, like there's little pieces of it that she'll come
Oh.
through. I'm like, what is this magic?
She's like, boop.
Yeah, yeah, but that I was a absolute no for ayahuasca. It hadn't been something that really called to me. I felt like everyone around me was doing it, and there was part of me that felt like, oh, I'm missing out. But that was not a good enough reason for me to go and try. And I remember seeing a flyer for this ceremony, and it didn't say what the medicine was. So I was like, if it's ayahuasca, then I'm not going to do it. And a few weeks went by, and I actually talked to the woman that was helping facilitate the ceremony. And she told me who was going to be there, who was going to be facilitating. Everything fell off, and it was just like a 100% yes, I want to be here for
Mm.
this. It was mostly women and facilitators pregnant or coming back from maternity leave. It was just this beautiful feminine container. Um, and it felt very, very safe and very sure. Like I said, it was all of a sudden, it was just the switch flipped. And it was like, yes, this is a yes for me.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, the experience was so incredible. The people that I met in that ceremony are going to be people that I know I will know for a very long time.
Mm.
Um, and the piece of ceremony music, experiencing that, and I just got to experience that with Amanda the other day with the psilocybin ceremony. Holy cow. Um, I'm really sensitive to sound and music, and oh wow, her voice is so amazing. But just music and ceremony in general, I love. Um, I love the feeling of that. I love what it adds, and I like that ceremony space that feels. When I experienced it just the other day, it was like, oh, we are so far off. This is this is what matters. Like all of these traumas that we have, everything that's all of the problems is like this agreed excess that we don't need. It's just this moment of song and connection to heart and to nature and to self. I'm like, this is all that matters, and I love those moments and ceremony of aha, aha,
Mm.
you know. And then it's that I just have this massive pull in me to, okay, now how do I make this change, in my life? How to, not just for me, but for my kids, because the change that I see is really huge, you know. Um, and I'm so happy to know like women like you, other people that are opening their hearts and opening their voices, and it's things are changing, and I'm around people that are stepping into this, and it gives me so much hope, and there's so much excitement for myself and for the kids, for the future.
That's so good.
Mm.
That's so nice. Um, and is the change that you experienced like something that you see changing within the world? and you just felt it within yourself, like a really big change? Is it you like owning something that you haven't before? Because a lot of people ask me, what do you get out of ayahuasca? What do you get out of mushrooms or doing psilocybin or anything like that? And,
Mhm.
it depends on how you show up and what you're ready for and how open you are. And like, so
Yeah.
I've had experiences where I come in just wanting the experience and not really feeling called to it. And I think we talked about this before about discernment and actually feeling called to do something.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like what that big change was that you felt.
Um, well, when in ayahuasca ceremony, what I saw was what I would have to step into. It's like who I would have to step into in order to do the work that I wanted to do. Um, and it was that moment of like, oh wow, you really got to put your big girl pants on. can you can you do that? It's a big part of that too is defeating like the people pleaser in me and like the Miss Nice and don't hurt anybody's feelings and like no, your discernment, like other people need your discernment as well, and you need to speak up, you need to be able to speak your piece. And so that was really really scary for me, and it was just yeah, it feels like a deep, like a I don't know, again, a primal, like a thud, like this is just you have to do this. Like the knock is strong enough to push me to know that like this this matters and this is important. And I don't know how, I feel like it's confusing to explain sometimes because and that intuition, right? How do you explain intuition? It's like these feelings that I have in my body when they're this strong, I don't ignore those ones. And
Mm.
those of what have led me to where I am today. And sometimes I can look kind of messy, but I think on the grand scale, um, you know, I feel like I'm living a pretty extraordinary life and showing my kids a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's sorry, got off track there.
No.
Um but yeah, it really I felt like showed me who I had to be to
Mm.
step into and that I could be. And then other medicine ceremonies have shown me like that higher self, this woman or this I don't even feel like woman is the word. It's just like this strong being that nothing touches. Like it was an experience with like a ketamine meditation where it was so quiet and silent and it was just, oh silly, your crown fell off, just put it back on, no big deal. And it was like here I am on the external like just spiraling and dying and all of this ick, and it was just like so gentle and so easy.
Mm.
And I tend to be really hard and aggressive and think that things need to be like that in order to change. And it's really beautiful to step into a medicine space and see what nature, what that mother has in store for you. Like how loving can that be? How can you be shown in a gentle way? So that's been beautiful.
I love it. I love that. Oh, silly, your crown just fell off. Just put it back on. Like it feels so do you feel like that's something that like most women need to hear?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think like I know, but at least for me, it's like little things feel like they're such big deals and little mistakes. And it's because there wasn't room for a mistake. Like it was perfection, perfection, and always striving for that and do all of the things. And then like building ego in that space of like, okay, yeah, I can do all of the things. I'm good at that. And let me keep that going. It's ah, it's that's a tough place to be in, and I'm so happy to be able to see those and be able to let some of those slide away. Like this, it doesn't have to be this aggressive, you
Mm.
know.
Do you think it comes from your background being an athlete, like that trained you to like like get it done, be perfect and get the goal or whatever it is?
Yeah, definitely the athlete in me is very strong, but it's also like really it was my relationship with my father, because that fueled a lot of my my drive in competition for
Mhm.
softball. I mean, I was talented and I was coachable and I was felt like I had natural talent there, but proving to him that I could, you know, do something when he said I couldn't was a big driver, you know. I tend to be that way, like, okay, yeah, tell me I can't do something. You know.
Same.
Um, but then and now I'm like, well, that's no way to live your life, like trying to prove someone wrong. Luckily, I really enjoyed the game as well, and it got me a scholarship, and like, you know, it really helped my. I really enjoy the masculine that the athlete world gave to me,
Mhm.
because it really helps me structure and stay disciplined. Um, so there's good pieces in there, of course, but yeah, that competitiveness I think really was stemmed more so with my relationship with my dad.
Mm. And how did you so I guess let's go into like shadowy stuff because this kind of feels like
Mhm.
digging in those places and peeling off the layers of the onion because it's like, okay, why are you so motivated to the best? Okay, go a little bit deeper and like how did you start to figure out your relationship with your dad in the athlete world? Because that's something that's curious to me now because I always
Mm.
had to be a really good athlete, I had to be like almost the best in the world and there was like all of these things driving me. Of course, I love the game, but I wonder if there's something else like lurking there.
Yeah. Um, for me, it all got triggered and like brought into awareness in relationship. And doing spiritual work and having a different like a new understanding and new resources for like here's what's going on. And then being open to seeing those things. And then maybe you understand them. You're like, oh yeah, I do that. But then your body is still like, I'm not changing. You might get it, but we're not changing. We're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Um so so yeah, really it showed up a lot in relationship and having a partner that is very honest and dedicated to growth and being able to
Mm.
um help see these things in me and work with me as I didn't want them to die off. But he really helped me identify a lot of my patterns. And it just, I was open to that um, to some degree. Like, I think it was really hard for him to confront me in a lot of ways because I'm really defensive. You know, again, more came up with more shadow work involved there with stuff with my dad. Um, but committing and being in a relationship where growth is, you know, the priority is really what brought that awareness out, and allowed me to start, you know, following the lines and seeing where some of these things come from, and you know, how it affects my attachment style, and you know, the needs and the wants that come up within myself. So yeah, I would say like the change was opening my mind to these things and then being immersed in relationship and then with the spiritual community. Like it's just everywhere. I couldn't avoid it for the last 2 years.
So you said committed to growth. I think that's a really important thing for people to hear in relationship because I heard Ram Dass say something one time and he's like a lot of people say are we with the right person and they kind of mull this over in their head a lot. Am I in the right relationship blah blah blah. But it's like are you evolving in the relationship? And I think when you're committed to evolution and into growth, sometimes it doesn't so much matter so much. I mean, everything's growth, right? Like you said, you had was it a 17-year marriage and then ended
Mhm.
up getting a divorce. And so I'm sure that was a lot of growth and shadow work that you had to go through with that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And how did you know it was time to go? Like what, and I guess for the, let's like go, I guess the shadow and relationships kind of go hand in hand. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm curious kind of like when you got the hit that it was time to,
Um, well, honestly, it was not that way. There was the hit of, hey, it's time we separate. We need some time apart. to
Mhm.
work on a lot of things as we opened our marriage without having a clue what we were doing, basically. We did not have the resources. We had no idea what we were stepping into. And so it just triggered the shit out of everything. And there was then a lot to self-reflect on. And so there was like, okay, this is a situation that is no longer healthy for us to be in, full time together with the kids, especially living in an RV. It's tough to, have private conversations and not be able to feel all the emotion that's here. So we took our time and really focused on ourselves and did healing there. But I got to a point just in May where I was like, do we want to work on this again? Because it wasn't like the separation in my mind wasn't permanent. It was, we need to heal some things and come back together. But he hasn't wanted to try to put things back together. I think he's pretty happy with his current situation. And so that's why we went ahead and went through with the divorce, and knowing that too, that the piece of paper doesn't determine what type of relationship we can have. We can still build whatever we want, beyond this. And I'm lucky that we have a very healthy relationship and supportive. He's still full-time RVing as well. We typically park together most of the time, so the girls feel really supported.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. There's never, I'm not I can't really speak too much on when is it time to go. I mean, I've like only had one major long relationship, and I wasn't at a point where I was ready to let that go. And then like being in my other partnership, I question myself all the time now. Like as I've discovered so much about myself, I question whether I should be in a relationship right now.
Mhm.
Is there, it's a lot to hold. And I'm so thankful to have support, but like then there's the days that I'm, not happy with the way I show up and worry how that comes down the line. But again, in a partnership where you're committed to growth, there's a little more compassion and a little more patience and forgiveness involved. Thank God. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I can see in some people when they're done. Like I feel like you know it in
Yeah.
your body. The four centers is something that I like to refer to. I heard it on Juliet Allen's podcast, and she talks about your connection with um, anybody else. There's four places. So your mind, your heart, your intuition, and your sex center. And so what is turned on with one person could be totally different with another. You see that hot guy across the room, and that's sex centers lighting up like crazy, but you don't know what else is available there yet. And then with my kids, my heart and my mind and my intuition, those are super on fire. And so I think it's really interesting to look at relationships that way and evaluate like where do we connect and what is like a full four center fuck yes. It's like when all the lights are on, then.
Bing, bing, bing. Okay,
Mhm.
that's a really cool way to look at relationships. And it's interesting. I feel like the open relationship thing has gotten a lot of craze. It's been like a thing that a lot of people have tried or that think is cool. And I admire your ability to say that like we got into something that we had no idea what we were doing and opening up. And I think that's good for people to hear because I think they hear people like Aubrey talk about it, for example, and his experience with it. But now he's actually in a, monogamous committed relationship. So it's just interesting to hear how people try it and then it actually ends up going another way. Like, would you consider it again? Or is that something that's like, nope, tried it. It's not something that's for me. Like,
So it's really, it's again the mind shift. It's like, oh, this makes sense in a lot of ways. I'm certainly gun shy now because in my experience, I opened up my relationship and a bomb went off. Like Shane came into the picture and showed me a totally different way to love and set again those full, those four centers and everything in my body telling me like something is really important here. Don't look away from this.
Mm.
Um and like I didn't know that's what that didn't I wasn't expecting that piece, like we should have been going to like play parties or something like because we were just looking to experience something a little more, being married for 17 years, being each other's, one and only. Like let's expand a little bit here. But yeah, I don't know. The way that we went about it just opened things up. And that's the scary part is you never know what you're inviting in at the end of the day. Things could massively change and that's scary, you know. But also learn that on the other side of fear, there's a lot there, but it's really a big, big personal responsibility. Um, a lot of personal accountability, a lot of self-love, and a lot of communication.
Yes.
The sex is like the very, very tiny piece.
Yeah, right? That makes so much sense. And everybody puts that as like the biggest pillar of it. Like, oh, well, you get this. But it's like, well, wait a minute. Well, who are you and how are you and what are you doing in this whole space? So there's so much more to it than just that little piece of it.
Yeah.
And I guess
It's
talking
like
about,
the fast track to personal growth, really. Because it triggers everything real quick.
yeah. Even thinking about it like triggers me in a way. Like, I don't think I could, I'm just not, I don't know if I'm evolved enough or done enough work, but I don't think there's nervous system stuff that happens when I think about it. Cause I would
Mhm.
like to get to the place where I'm evolved and I've done enough work on myself where I feel really confident. That's a whole narrative that I have in my head. I'm like, I would love to be that strong woman that's like, okay with that.
Mhm.
But I haven't met her yet. Like, she's
Yeah.
not, I don't know her yet in here. Um, and so when you said you met Shane and like, I want to just talk about the importance of men's work and women's work and then go into the stuff
Mhm.
that you're creating now with the cyclic women's group and understanding our cycles.
Yeah.
And like the importance of doing conscious, I guess, men's work. Cause I think there's a lot of men that listen to this and women's work. Cause I know that you've been able to see both sides. Um,
Mhm.
and so I just want to talk about the importance of doing that and maybe even having your two separate male female groups that you do it with versus everybody's doing personal development and it's co-ed. What are the beauties of doing it, separate?
Right. So what I really love to do is do the men's and women's work individually and then bring them back together
Mm.
and discuss what it is that they've learned about themselves and sharing that with the others so we can understand one another better, like bridging that gap. Um, in my experience for women, there's such a strong desire and need for closeness with women and women's circles, and what comes out of those is so beautiful. And same thing for men. Men need a place to go and feel, right? And to be held by other men. Like it's breaking down a lot of barriers. There's so much competition on both ends between, other women and between men. And to be in spaces where that doesn't exist,
Mm.
it's just a whole nother level, right? Things feel so beautiful there. And I think like I did not grow up with a ton of girlfriends. I played softball and so I had like my tomboy friends and that was great, but they were never deep, close relationships. And it was always just my marriage or, my partnership. That was where everything was. That was my best friend. That was, where all the secrets were. It was just that one person. It's so much to hold. So I love now having a group of women and having friends that I know I can call and sometimes just be a bitch or just bitch and vent, right? Instead of like spewing that on my partner and like blaming and directing, like it's alive for me, but it's not appropriate for me to put it there. But, you
Mm,
know, it feels nice to be able to call other women and vent, but then also have them like see me and understand me, but also hold me accountable and to who I want to be,
mm,
you know. And that's what's important too about doing this type of women's work, is that it's not that we're not brewing toxic femininity, you know. It's not like, oh, he did that to you, let's go slit his tires and let's do this and like how dare, you know.
yeah.
it's it's the honesty that we need to bring to one another that's available in these spaces when we get to know one another and trust one another and can keep each other accountable, and like to have that piece blooming, I think is so helpful in my life, because I know I need more opinions. I need to reach out. I need to because yeah, I need some different views, because when you're in the middle of it, right, it's so tough to see your way out or see anything but your two options. So
Mm.
um but yeah, these spaces are just needed. They're needed, and they're so they're so beautiful. The tears, the strength, the screams, like the power, the vulnerability, and the rawness that is available in those circles is unlike anything I've experienced. And like I said, then to bring that together at the end so that we can start to understand one another, I think is what we try to do, at least. That's a shame that I've tried to do it at Soul Rising and other events that we've put together. Um, yeah, just so we
Mm.
can create some more compassion.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. And I finally felt the feeling of sisterhood. Like actually going to Sedona the first time was like a real close, like it was like becoming very online for me, like, oh, the femininity, like having your girls around. And when I was going through trouble with my husband and we were like on the brink of a divorce, kind of, we moved to Florida, and then I started to go to cacao circles, and I'm like, oh, what are these? Like, this is kind of fun. We could pull cards. And part of me at first wanted him to come, because he was like my one and only. This was the person I shared everything with. I didn't have any deep
Mhm.
girlfriends when I was in bodybuilding because it was mostly guys that I was,
Yeah.
just around, and our friends were together. And then I finally was like, oh, I actually don't want him to come to the Reiki circle. I don't even know if he would like it anyway. And me just wanting him to come is like my insecurity or something. And then I figured out that like he doesn't have to be my girlfriend too. He can be what he
Mhm.
is to me, like an amazing partner, but he doesn't also have to be like one of my girls. And that was a really big thing. And then this most recent time doing ayahuasca, I had this vision where it was like this divine sisterhood, and we were all like standing at the top of a hill or a mountain. And it was about a lot of it was about my grandmother. She was like this matriarch in the middle, and she started this whole thing, and she's like 85 now. So it was her and my mom and my aunt and me and my sister, and then all of our soul sisters. And we were all holding hands, super proud at the top of a mountain, and just strung together by this thread of love. And I kept feeling this
Mhm.
thread, this love sutra that binds all of us. Cause I was thinking in my head, like, what is it that we can call each other at any time of the day and we'll listen? And what is it that we would do anything to support the other? Like, what is this thing? And that whole ceremony for me just came back to like love, 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 sisterhood, love, femininity, love. It was just all of that. And so
Mhm.
that was like really big for me. And now I'm really excited about the cyclic women's group that you're starting with us and starting to learn about our cycles. And I think that this past like a couple months ago, when you guys were talking about the different like even colors and phases and archetypes, I was like, oh, so there's a way to honor our cycle instead of being
Mhm.
acting like it's like not a thing. We just don't talk about it. Like it's just, and now you've kind of really awakened a whole new thing in me. And I think it's helping me honor my goddess even more and feel like a sacred feminine, just like powerhouse versus just this little like, oh, I can do it. Or I'm either like a housewife or a sex symbol. For me, though, it's like being in the fitness industry, you take pictures and you're like naked. You don't work out to wear sweaters. And so it was like either you're this or you're sex symbol. So now you're helping me sort of be all of those things and then more. So I guess I want to like just kind of briefly go into the cyclic group that you're doing and how it's come online for you? Like why? Yeah, just I guess your story about how that's come to be.
Yeah, yeah. So the archetype language has always really worked for me. And I went to a women's circle in Costa Rica, and it was like this women's activation. I just thought it was going to be another share circle. And then all of a sudden, they start talking about these four archetypes. So I hear archetypes right away, and I'm like, ding, what? And they talk about, the moon phases and the different energies that they feel throughout the cycles, and all of it. Like the light bulbs were just going off in my head like crazy. All of like the webs were connecting, and I wanted to run out of there and just start writing stuff because I was like, oh, I know it. This is it. This is it. This is so exciting. And I've had a lot of fun learning about my cycle this way and about myself. Again, come like totally peeling off all of these layers and being at what I feel is like the rock bottom of it. I want to reestablish myself in a way that's really true to myself, because my mind has always been in partnership, and it's still hard as like because I'm a mom full time. Um, but how can I shift that and really build from what's true within me, and looking at my cycle and noticing the changes that I've had throughout the years. Like it started for me with looking at my PMS, because I always felt like there was just one day where I was just super bitch. I was like, don't talk to me, don't breathe on me, don't swallow, don't chew anywhere near my ear. And so I like years ago started trying to figure out when that was. And it's like 7 to 10 days before my period starts. Um, and so with this, I've been able to notice that the big thing was like the maiden energy, because that one I feel really strongly, especially after my cycle. And it's that go mode, that get everything done. I feel good. Nothing can stop me. I don't need anybody, just right. And that's the piece that society loves, because she gets everything done. And that's where we fall down, though, is that's where we expect the feminine to stay, is that linear pattern, because that's what's good for society. But that's not what the feminine is. The feminine flows, right? And
Yeah.
changes. And so starting to tune into myself and paying attention to when I feel these different energies alive in my body, when do I start to kind of slow down and recluse, naturally, and being able to chart that with my cycle, and then define these different archetypes and play with them has been a lot of fun too. I was joking about open relating. I told Shane, I was like, well, it's still like we're in an open relationship, because you have like four different women that show up, right? Because you can have a lot of fun and really embody these different archetypes with the way you dress, and maybe what jewelry you wear, what feels like, if you really tune into what feels good in your body, what is this energy, what to want to express.
Mm.
When are you more creative? What is your sex life like, or your sex drive like during these different phases? And then I'm excited too to have one of our girlfriends talk about like our actual hormone levels and what's going on medically, like behind the scenes, and what that looks like, and how we can balance that with nutrition. Like
Mhm.
it's like the beginning piece that we're able to tweak our whole lives around, to be able to set ourselves up to express what's true to us, like all the time, instead of trying to just stick to one piece. um and it's really interesting too, once you start paying attention to these cycles, and then like being in the winter time, and being where it's colder, and feeling naturally like I kind of want to hibernate and recluse, and time to slow down and reflect on the year, right? And we get that opportunity like throughout the whole year, but we also get that every month, right? We have this built-in cycle that we get to use for our growth if we want. And I'm so excited to rebuild from this place that feels so true to myself. And again, embodiment, I have 2 young girls, they're 10 and 11. Like they're like at any moment we could have, 3 girls rocking their moon in this
Yeah.
RV. So, um, and I want them to experience something different. I want them to know from the beginning that this is something special that their female body does. This is not something to push aside, or this is not something that gets in the way of the rest of your life, but this is something to connect to and that can help you guide your life, actually.
Mm.
So I'm excited to create beautiful ceremonies for them and just invite them into something very different than what I experienced.
Definitely. And I'm guessing, it's like this new generation or this new way of thinking. Cause I know my mom didn't experience anything like this. I certainly didn't. And she wasn't like,
Mhm.
like, she was very helpful and everything like that. But I think society and being an athlete, it was like, it just wasn't a thing. And then with bodybuilding, I would celebrate when it would go away. So like
Mm,
my mom and her walking me into that, and she was a nurse, she was very helpful with it, like the medical part of it. And
yeah.
then it was like, we just don't need that. There's no place for that. It makes you, in fact, when you are lean enough, it goes away. So we're going to go ahead
Hmm.
and celebrate the month that you don't get your period, because that means that your body fat is low enough. So for me, just now hearing about this is it feels like reclaiming your power, like reclaiming
Yeah.
your feminine. And I like how you're calling it establishing her. For me, it feels like reclaiming power and reclaiming that femininity that I don't think has been honored, I guess, or cherished in the way that it should be. And I think in like Native American culture, they also say that women on their cycle shouldn't touch sacred objects because they alter the energy of it. And I was like, okay. So that feels really powerful.
Hmm.
And just, I guess, I want to know about, and I know about the archetypes, but people out there listening who this is their first
Hmm.
time even hearing the word archetype, can you
Yeah.
just like, go a little bit into those?
Yes. So like the 4 for the cycles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what the
Okay.
word archetype like even means.
Yeah. So the word archetype, like I tell the kids this because they're always like, "What is that? What is that?" And so I look at things that like they would know. I look at characters and stories in mythology, and we still have these archetypes present, but we don't tell the stories like we used to
Mm.
anymore. But we see them in our movies, and we see like we talk about Moana. My girls are really into the Hunger Games, and we talk about Katniss Everdeen and what kind of person she represents and what does she stand for. You hear the word mother. The word mother is an archetype, and it's just like what words do you think would describe that mother? And it's just like when you look at somebody and something stands out about them, like what's another example? Like um, Carolyn Miss in Sacred Contract, she talks about a new archetype that's online now, and that's like the computer nerd, like this because it's a real thing. It wasn't around before, but it's like this person that lives underground and does all of this stuff online. Like that's a real person now, and it's something that people recognize and possibly strive for,
Mm.
or identify characteristics of that within themselves. Right? It gives them like something bigger to imagine, something story like. Um, and so we look at the cycle, and the 4 goddess energies that we're looking at are in connection with the moon phases. So we have your maiden phase, which is also represented by like the springtime. This is when like things are coming alive and coming online. Um, and I know for me, like the word maiden is like kind of delicate, a little too delicate for me.
Yeah.
But like Artemis is a maiden goddess, right? And she is a warrior and she is a huntress. So that's also, but she is a virgin goddess. She is there for herself and for her own pleasure. She's not there to create life. Like it's just her and her own being. So there's the maiden, the mother archetype. My favorite example of this is Mother Gaia. I mean, what better example
Yeah.
is there? The enchantress, oh, sorry, so the mother energy is during like your ovulation phase, and this would be the full moon. Um, and then we move into the enchantress phase, which is premenstrual. And this is when things can get dicey and wiry and highs and lows happen, and there's a lot going on. And this is also the time that we start to go within. You notice like your negative thought patterns might start coming up more. Um, and it's just your subconscious mind starts to take over at this point, and then you move into your menstrual cycle, which is your crone stage, and this is where intuition is stronger, and it's also that winter time where you slow down and you reflect, and it's such a beautiful space to be able to look at your whole month and look at what's come up and use that and alchemize that into the following. Like, how can I set myself up very, for this very next month and make these changes within myself and keep myself accountable? Like, it's all there and built in. It's so amazing. um, but yeah, there's these, so like this, I got off track. So the enchantress energy, like Kali would be a perfect example of enchantress. And for the crone, I just started listening to this book called The Power of the Crone, which is incredible. It gives like so much respect to the abuela
Ah,
energy and to this wise woman and her importance. Oh my gosh. Um, but there's so many fun stories too, like Baba Yaga. I love listening to stories about Baba Yaga. And and the medicine woman, right? And so these are like the different archetypes that we get to play with, but really they get to be personal for yourself. Like you get to fill in like, what does your maiden energy feel like? What color does she like to wear? How does she like to do her hair? What feels good on her skin? What does she like to do for her workouts? Is she versus your crone, where maybe you're more quiet and more reserved and you want to lay down and take time to just journal and write, and maybe do yoga instead. And I know me personally, I was like, oh no, I'm an athlete, so this is my workout for the next 30 days because that's what it's going to take to reach my goals. Doesn't matter what your energy level is, we ignore that.
yeah, that's not a thing.
Right, so
Mm.
yeah, this is just a really beautiful way to tap back into
Mm.
to our home.
Ah, to our home. Yeah. And speaking of, so this podcast is called Talking Each Other Home. What is home to you? What is that?
Oh, home. That's really been an interesting one, living nomadically, and home has always been something that I love to decorate and invite people into. And so it's been a little rattling to like not necessarily have a space where I can do that, or I'm staying in other people's homes. And so really again defining home for myself and feeling at home within
Mm.
myself and knowing that I feel good and strong and confident, and that's how my kids feel as well. Especially with them, moving around at such a young age. I hope it allows them to be flexible, but also still feel secure if we can build that home. And it's when I think of home though, like I picture I like to be the center of home. I like to bring people to me. I picture like the big pot of soup in the middle and sitting around just a table at dinner the other night. We put everything on the table and just passed, everything around, and just the connection that brings, that warm, cozy space where everybody just comes together and the worries fade away and we're just happy when they're eating. And the home is really warm,
Mm.
warm and simple. A lot of connection and quiet times, really. I mean, it's really so simple. And
Mm.
I know I've complicated things over the years, and I'm so happy that I see how simple it can be to just connect.
Mm. That's so awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Man, we talked about a lot, and I just remembered you're like an amazing cook too. So we might have to save that for another thing. I just, after you said you made a big meal, I was like, oh yeah, her food's amazing actually. And you were a whole favor flairy thing, or favor fairy, favor flairy.
Mhm.
Um, but maybe we'll save that for the next podcast that we can do together, because I feel like there's so much that we can talk about. But I guess, is there anything else you want to say about
Yeah.
any of the topics that we talked about, or any like kind of closing remarks, or anything you want to just, that's on your heart that you want to just say?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wrap it up. A little wrap it up speech. I don't know. Like the piece that's really standing out to me again is like we touched on courage,
Mm,
right? Courage to walk the path that is unknown. And I feel like, you know, you can do that if you step into a different lifestyle and you move into a van, or maybe you decide to visit another country. But I feel like the whole world is being, you know, asked to step into something new right now, right? With COVID happening and like little aftershocks, I feel like the world keeps shaking us and shaking us to see who's gonna dig their claws in and stick around and make the change. And that courage piece is so important. I remember feeling it in me, and I think it was in June after COVID hit, and it was all of a sudden this click of like, oh, this is what I've always felt. Like I've always felt in me that there's something that I'm going to have to stand up to. And at first I was like, oh, is it going to be standing up to vaccinations for my kids? My kids aren't vaccinated to begin with, so there's no way that this COVID vaccine is happening. And then I realized, no, there's the change is bigger than that. Like you're standing up for something so much bigger than that. And it's the way we live, and it's the way we connect and interact with one another. And having the courage to do that, knowing that I have so much work to do on myself. You know, it's scary, right? When do we think we're ready to step in? But I'm ready now because I'm a mom now and my kids are watching right now.
mm,
And there's other people that I know that are watching and they're waiting for permission that they don't need, but it's still, I know that I can give that. So I just want to tell people to be open and be courageous and compassionate and loving. Like it's, if we could just do that, things would be really, really wonderful, you know? And maybe we could figure out how to share water, get people clean water and food. Like, I love all the AI and technology. It's great. We could do this, but our basic needs still aren't being met. You know, it's can we have the courage to say, hey, we fucked up here massively. Can we make the changes that are necessary for humanity? You know, so we need more courageous people. And I'm so happy that I'm surrounded by them and I'm seeing them step up all the time. Thank you for having this podcast and putting voices out
mm,
into the world and giving people permission.
mm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your words and your presence and your courageousness coming on here, and, even launching your group, the Cyclic Women, and going through all, like, there's so much power emanating from you. And it's primal. Like you said, dig your claws in, like there's so much of that like primal energy within you. And it's really cool to witness. And it's even cool as somebody who's not a mom yet to see a mom who is just courageous and standing up and doing it different and like living her truth. And it's really inspiring to be your friend and in your circle. So I can't
Thank
wait. I'm
you.
excited for like our first calls and all the stuff like that you have going on. And I have nothing but like, I'm cheering you on. Like you sent those videos in the group and I was like, Tonya, fuck yeah. I was like, oh, like just cheering for you. So just feel my energy just in your corner, kind of cheering you on. And yeah, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your stories with us. I so appreciate you, Tonya.
Yeah, you're welcome. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for coming to camp. Thank
The
you
best.
for walking the path and giving your expression to the world. Thank you, Dani. Love you so much.
I love you. And I guess everybody out there, like, thank you so much for spending your time and energy with us and watching this episode. I appreciate you so much. And Tonya, thank you again. And everybody, will see you on the next one. Have a wonderful day. Happy full moon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Full
And
moon.
yeah, full moon vibe, sending it your way. Rituals, moon water, all that good stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.